too. There's an energy roundtable that's going to be held in Queensland later this afternoon. State government will then release its 5-year energy roadmap. It's all about laying the path for Queensland's energy future. And part of that is a $5.75 billion budget that's committed to large-scale energy projects this financial year. Part of that mix, in the energy mix, of course, is solar. And Queensland continues to lead the nation when it comes to solar. However, are we really making the most of the fact that we are the Sunshine State? Joining us on 4BC Afternoons, Heidi Lee Douglas, CEO of Solar Citizens. And Heidi this afternoon is going to be presenting 2 key policies to the roundtable. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Sophie.
It's kind of like a bit of a practice. You can present them to us first before you do it this afternoon.
Exactly, practice pitch.
Yeah, good on you. Look, we love our solar and we were very keen, to put the politics aside. We've got sunshine that happens. We know that there is the ability to harness that and for it to be a part of the energy mix. Clearly, there is still room for improvement.
So Queenslanders love rooftop solar. It doesn't matter which politics you support, you love rooftop solar.
Yeah.
It's because it gives you energy security, it gives you energy independence, and it brings down your energy bills. And it gives you resilience as well against high heat or even in flooding and cyclones. You know, if you have a battery or a vehicle that can run power in your home, it can give you extra resilience in your home. So it's like a little castle, a little island of security.
We sort of seem to have done 2 steps forward and 1 step back with this. You know, when there was the first wave of people, some of them might be in this room with us, who embraced solar quickly. Feed-in tariffs were really fantastic. It ended up being a way to see that power bill be driven down. That sort of changed over time. We've now got the debate and the conversation around the technology of batteries and the self-sufficiency of it. But also I think the amount of wasted energy that we know is produced that can't be fed back into the grid and sort of seems to be disappearing into the ether.
That's right. So with such high rooftop solar penetration, so you've got more than 50% across Queensland, in some areas more than 60% rooftop solar penetration. A lot of that energy is not being harnessed to use at night, which is why Solar Citizens lobbied hard in the lead up to this federal election for all parties to commit to a federal battery rebate. And we actually managed to secure that from the Labor government, made that commitment. And from the 1st of July, that's rolling out across Australia. We're getting an uptake of 10,000 batteries on a regular basis. I think the total amount is already more than 30,000 from just the last few weeks. So it's an incredibly popular policy because it capitalises on the investment that people have already made in rooftop solar. And in Australia, residences and businesses have already invested $25 billion of their own money in rooftop solar.
What is the situation at the moment with batteries? What sort of batteries are you seeing being the most popular for the uptake? And at the end of the day, what is the hip pocket cost?
Well, the battery rebate brings down the price of a battery between 30 and 50%. So people are really choosing larger batteries, and they're also upsizing their rooftop solar as well in order to capitalise on that. So we're getting, but the good news is that most of the people installing the batteries are people installing rooftop solar for the first time as well. So it's
complete package.
Complete package.
The technology's obviously moved an awful lot, continues to do so. You know, we know that there is always going to be movement in that technology. Are people feeling safe and secure about what's available for them now?
Oh, definitely. People are feeling it's safer and more secure to have rooftop solar and a battery on their home than it is to rely on aging coal-fired plants that are unreliable. There's been accidents in across the country, but particularly in Queensland, and high energy prices. So people want that energy security.
Yeah, you know, just before we started talking, as you walked into the room, you know, I said we talk about energy. It just seems like in this country and certainly in our state, it's so convoluted. It's really easy, I think, for us to get bogged down in too much of the politics and not really understanding why we've ended up with such a convoluted system that nobody, I have to be honest with you, Heidi, can clearly articulate why it's so confusing and why we still send so much power over such long distances, and we haven't looked at microgrids anywhere really successfully.
I think that's a legacy issue. So when our energy systems were set up in Australia, they were set up around large single energy producers like coal-fired power stations or gas, and mostly they're a long way away from people, so they require large, long transmission lines. What's happened since then, since the 80s and 90s, is that people have really democratized their energy uptake, their energy producers as well as consumers. So we need a modern grid that recognizes that. And that's about this consumer energy roadmap that we're asking the energy minister today to make sure is part of his new 5-year energy plan. New South Wales government is already doing it. The federal government is already doing it. We don't want Queenslanders left behind because they've already made the investment in rooftop solar and increasingly in batteries and vehicle to grid. So we need to make sure that his energy plan, David Janeski's energy plan, integrates this great investment in rooftop solar and storage into the modern energy grid moving forward.
The other policy that you're taking this afternoon to this roundtable is one that really caught my attention, and I think anyone who's ever flown above the city will probably be able to appreciate what I say. When you look down on top of a densely populated cityscape and you see all of that roof space that's just concrete. And in other parts of the world, they've done a much better job in utilising that space for solar. So you've now put this second policy before them, which is about using more commercial properties for solar use. Can you run us through that?
Well, that's right. So while we have a really great success story in terms of residential people in Australia putting rooftop solar on their homes, commercial and industrial have not had the same incentives. And so we've got this low-hanging fruit of the energy transition, which is to max out rooftop solar and storage on commercial and industrial rooftops. So that'll be good for businesses, but it's also good for anybody in the area who's locked out of rooftop solar. So I'm talking about apartments, I'm talking about strata, I'm talking about renters, people who maybe don't have enough rooftop solar roof space themselves or don't have tenure over their own roof, don't own that roof. They can plug into the cheap, clean power that comes out of these commercial and industrial warehouse sites in what we are calling an urban renewable energy zone.
Problem with that is that somebody will lose out. Someone needs to make money out of that. No one likes the idea of just popping solar panels on the roof, creating those microgrids that I mentioned earlier so that I can feed my power to you and you pay me directly. We don't really have the framework to incentivise that, even though it might make sense.
There are 2 pilots happening currently in New South Wales, one in Illawarra, so the Wollongong area, and one where I live, Botany Mascot, that's just kicking off now. So they're both areas with a lot of commercial and industrial rooftops and places like my area, Mascot, Botany, where there's heaps of apartments, so people locked out of those rooftop solar savings. So these pilots are already happening in New South Wales, and we want the Queensland government to commit to a pilot here, maybe in an area like Logan, where you've got heaps of rooftop solar potential on the commercial and industrial spaces, people locked out. We've done the maths. You could have 200% of the power that you need in Logan if you had an urban renewable energy zone there.
Yeah. I do think that there is an argument to be mounted that we need to consider how we do things differently and thinking outside the box. This idea of continuing to try to fit this square peg because we know what the peg is into a round hole doesn't seem to make sense.
It's about the democratisation of power as well. It's about giving power back to the people, which means cost of living savings for the people ongoingly. And that's also good for the environment. So it's a win-win-win, and we really hope that the government supports it.
Who's going to be in the room with you this afternoon? Obviously, the Treasurer will be there. So David Janeski hopefully will be there with his policy advisors. Who else is going to be there?
Oh, it's quite a long list of really great thought leaders and doers who are interested across the board, from urban renewable energy zones like myself, like the Smart Energy Council is also calling for that, and then others who are more specialist in the regional energy zone uptake as well.
If it gets the tick and these policies are brought to the government and they like the idea of at least proceeding to do trials, how quickly can things change?
Well, we've seen the pilots already kicking off in New South Wales. We've seen the Consumer Energy Resources Roadmap already kicked off in traction, moving in New South Wales. So actually Queensland's a little bit behind. So come on, get that state competition happening.
I will have a look tomorrow, Heidi, with great interest to see how this is being spoken about after the roundtable this afternoon, what the response is. Obviously, these leaders coming together. It's about also sharing this information, I think, which is the really vital part. You know, this is never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. It's also never going to be any solution presented that everybody is going to jump on board with. But I do think we need to be opening our minds to how we get more reliable power, as you said, for everybody, but also where the prices come down. The technology will catch up. We know that battery technology and storage is only getting better with every iteration. We also now know that we're doing a much better job of even recycling our solar panels, which for some people is a really huge mental hurdle. The fact is we need these things. That's how the technology works. We can do a much better job of making sure they have a better end of life. So all of these things play a part in the solution.
Well, the National Energy and Climate Ministerial meeting has made a commitment for solar recycling, also driven by the New South Wales government. So these things are happening. So there's a lot of optimism in the solar industry with all the battery uptake at the moment. If we can also open these mechanisms for commercial and industrial, it'll drive jobs as well in our cities and our regions, because some of these commercial and industrial areas are in regional communities. And we've spoken to like Andrew Wilcox, who's an MP up the coast, and he loves the idea for like Townsville, for instance, because there's only one energy line in and one energy line out. So if they can have that energy security and independence, it protects them from future events as well.
Really quickly, and I do need to run to the news. I've got Georgia waiting for me patiently, Heidi, but I know you need to go to get to this lunch as well, or the afternoon session. There are questions that have come through from listeners about, the fact that as soon as we start talking about renewable energy, there'll always be people that say, well, what happens when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow when it comes to wind generated power? We have overcast and we have rainy days. There are people who have solar and batteries already in place and say that won't be there for extended periods. There's a suggestion here that you still have some available constant baseload power.
I think baseload power is a bit out of date, to be honest. Like dispatchable power is what we need, and that's what batteries provide us. So, yeah, I think people need to get with the modern energy grid.
Thanks, Heidi. That was the last word for you today. All the best this afternoon. We'll see how it goes.